Welcome to Future Foodcast. I'm Pam Line Miller, your host. There is a big trend going on all across the world to really eat cleaner, more fruits and vegetables, know what your food is. And we have an expert with us today to talk all about that. Ricky Silver, he's the CEO of Daily Harvest. Welcome to the show, Ricky.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited to dive into this. This is really on everyone's mind right now, and especially since when we're recording this, we're at the beginning of 2025. Just it will be evergreen content, obviously, but a lot of people set goals to eat better. Tell us about what Daily Harvest does.
Yeah, so I'm proud to say that I get to lead Daily Harvest, the company on a mission to improve human and planetary health by making it more convenient to eat sustainably grown organic fruits and vegetables every day. We really believe that habits are formed when you have an ability to eat things that you love, that make you feel great, and ultimately are grown in a way that generate the right outcomes for you as the person and the food system as a whole. And so this time of year, certainly folks are looking to make new choices or adjustments around their diet, and we love that we are a foundational part of that for so many customers.
Right. I am one, if you're not listening to this at the beginning of a year, listen, I'm one who is always reworking and resetting those goals and always trying to do better. And certainly in the eating area, I think all of us love to eat. And we have, I guess, the comfort foods that we've always gone to, but it's nice to identify some new, healthier, better choices. But how did you even get started with Daily Harvest? Let's kind of back up a little bit. What was the impetus for getting started with this?
Yeah, Daily Harvest was started by our founder, Rachel Drury, who recognized firsthand that as someone who understood the food system well, and was a, very talented athlete in college, she was herself personally struggling with finding solutions that solve these challenges, right? That sort of tension between what's convenient and what's healthy was really top of mind. And so she set out to build a business and a brand and a suite of offerings that solve that problem first for herself, then for her friends and family, and very quickly built an incredible business, one we know and love today. We now offer a range of different items, including gluten-free pasta meals and lunch meals and snacks. But the business is often most known for the category Rachel started with, our ready-to-blend smoothies. And the insight there was, folks are looking for ways to eat healthier, particularly in that breakfast occasion to get started, start your day exactly as you need. And yet that sort of combination of ingredients, being able to buy a lot of different things that maybe go bad in your refrigerator, or it's expensive to, purchase in bulk. She solved that by creating ready-to-blend mixes that were delivered right to your door. And so 10 years later, we, as I mentioned, now sell a range of categories in a range of locations. We entered grocery stores about a year ago and are just very excited to continue to meet consumers where they are to help them on these food journeys. We know that folks want to form healthy habits, but often it is really hard to stick to them. At Daily Harvest, we try to make sure that we are available when you need us the most. Maybe that is you just got diagnosed with diabetes and you're looking to find something that fits the need to form, an adjustment in your diet. Or maybe you're kicking off a Whole30 month, to kind of reset in a moment. Our food is foundationally healthy for you, and is personalizable in a way that I think provides a lot of solutions to the needs of many.
I think a few things you just said there are really going to catch the attention of our watchers and listeners. First of all, I think I read on your website where you talk about, clean food that fits your life. And that's really what you're talking about here. Seems like Rachel was on the cutting edge, really, a little early with, ready to blend everything in one package and delivered to your door because consumers are all about convenience and they aren't going to spend all the time buying the fresh fruits and vegetables, cutting them up or preparing them, and then actually making it. And so the convenience is speaking to us right now. The consumers are going, yes, that's what I want. But now, fast forward 10 years, people are used to getting food delivered to their door. They're used to the ready to eat or ready to cook, ready to prepare boxes of food or prepared things. So Daily Harvest was really kind of on the front end of that convenience piece of it. But the other part of what you talked about is also good for the planet. So tell us about, because Daily Harvest also has a mission to not only help people meet their lifestyle goals in all different categories of food, depending on what their goals are and what they're doing. Like you said, if they've got a recent diagnosis that needs them to change their eating structure or what they eat, or whether they're just trying to be healthier, kind of reset their body. But also the corporations can get involved with Daily Harvest.
Yeah. So, I think what is interesting about the times we're living in today, there has been a sort of elevation in the conversation around the sort of chronic disease epidemic the country is facing. And, I think what we hope to help your listeners hear about today and continue conversation on is making the connection that is directly connected back to our food system. And so, we think a lot about the food system, the food we eat, what it does to our bodies. And then separately, we think about the sort of agricultural system and the industrial food system almost as a distinct conversation. I think what's happening now more than ever is that we're making the connection, and the sort of conversation is now happening at the intersection, which is great because it is just happens to be true that foods like organically grown fruits and vegetables are not just good for you, they're also a part of a much healthier food system on the agricultural front. Unfortunately, in this country, less than 1% of our land, less than 1% of our commodities are grown organically, which means there is a tremendous amount of chemical pesticides and conventional agriculture that's fueling our system. We can go on and on about the reasons why, but at Daily Harvest, we really try to incentivize and quite frankly, inspire other businesses and other partners to find solutions to make transitioning the system to more organic agriculture a reality. We've partnered with a range of different entities, some you would argue we even compete with, right? To try to spur on the idea that if you want to make change in the food system, companies can't do it on their own. We've also partnered with incredible nonprofits like the Farmland Trust and CCOF, one of the leading organic certifiers and nonprofits, to help underserved farmers actually make that transition from conventional to organic. I would say it's not because farmers don't want to or don't believe that growing organically is better for the system. It's that there are a lot of impediments to making that system a reality. And so we need corporations, we need the government, we need more large scale collaboration to overhaul the system. And the beauty is ultimately that will be better for the planet and for the consumption of food that drives the right health outcomes. And I think that's that intersection I want to continue to emphasize because that's ultimately where the difference is going to be made.
Yes, and we have a worldwide audience, and I think this issue is being dealt with across the world. Seriously, Ricky. For those who, because you're in the U.S. and you serve the U.S. at this point, CCAF is a California-based organization that
That's
works
correct.
with certifying
Certifying organic. Yes, that's
organic.
correct.
Right. And I know there are other organizations worldwide that do similar
Absolutely.
certifying. So just to extrapolate out for our worldwide audience to be able to apply what you're saying to their locale, because, it's all an ecosystem and everybody needs to get involved with paying attention to what's going on there. So I'm excited to know that when I try to eat better and source from those who are doing some of the organic agriculture work, that I'm supporting that ecosystem. And you in 2024, I'll give you the number because I don't know, you had 6.3 million pounds of ingredients that you used in your product, and almost 93% of those are organic. That's astounding.
Yes, and we've long been built with the understanding that sort of our sourcing philosophy is one that should be uplifting organic agriculture. But part of the remaining 8% is actually our larger commitment to transitional purchasing directly. For your listeners, deciding to grow organically isn't as easy as it may sound. There's actually a 3-year transition that during that time period, the farmers are investing in growing organically. They, for all intents and purposes, are growing organically, but they're not yet able to be certified. And so there's this transitional period in which we are trying to take some of the pressure off and trying to take some of the impediments away from farmers continuing on that journey. And so in some cases, we've actually contracted directly with growers to make that transition possible. In other cases, as I mentioned, we work with nonprofits to help fund grants that afford those farmers both the necessary dollars and the sort of services to make those decisions. But it's not easy. And I think as a brand leader, I love to tell the honest truth, which is sometimes it doesn't work, right? Sometimes you work on programs and with good intention, but you run into other learnings that come up with maybe a reason to pivot. I can't stress enough, our philosophy has been to ground our decisions in the farming community and our consumer base and listen, right? The biggest thing brands can do, as they're quite frankly, regardless of what size you are, whether you're just starting or you're one of the largest, is listen more. We need to listen to the farmers growing our food and listen to ensure that we're coming up with solutions that make it possible for them to be a part of this big transformation that needs to happen.
Yeah, and Ricky, you talked earlier about partnering. I think about collaboration in the food industry. I don't see enough of that. So I'm
Agree.
excited to see that you're sharing your knowledge because you have a strategy to actually enable this regenerative and organic farming. And a lot of the knowledge that you have from the years that you've been in business and trying to empower farmers in this area, you're sharing with others. And also, I think you mentioned supply chain before. I don't know if you have any case studies or any stories of, how that's gone. It doesn't always go perfect, but hopefully you're iterating forward.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned supply chain. It's a word and an area that up until the pandemic, I would say most people, just the regular old consumer that go into the grocery store wasn't really thinking about the supply chain and where their food was coming from. I think COVID uniquely brought that, into people's mind because of the shortages and the challenges that occurred during that time. And we are hoping to continue to elevate that as a need, right? I think we talk about critical investments governments need to make into future-proofing, society against climate change. Agricultural supply chain has to be one of those areas, and it's not something that I think gets discussed as much as it should. But there are lots of things like aggregation that need to happen when you've got a lot of smaller farmers that want to be a part of the solution, but they need some assurance that the ingredients they're growing, the biodiverse ingredients in many cases, are going to have a home. The sort of farming community very much takes on a tremendous amount of risk every year, and increasingly so with the challenges we're seeing from climate change. And so I think when we think about these sort of moonshot investments, we're expecting both governments and large corporations and small corporations for that matter to make. This is one we have to tack towards something that's 10, 20, 30 years in the future and really ensure we're chipping away at progress each and every year.
Yeah. And that's sometimes harder because the immediate bottom line is not always impacted or maybe even impacted negatively when you're investing for the future. So, you have to weigh all of those options out there. But you talked earlier, let's get back to your product. So
Sure.
you have this corporate mission, you're collaborating and partnering, and I think that's what really differentiates you from a lot of other companies that simply supply food and beverage for at home, ready to make or ready to drink or ready to create your smoothie use is that corporate mission that you've got. But you also have fruits and vegetables and food beverages as well that fit certain profiles for people to easily say, I'm doing Whole 30 this month, I need foods that fit or products that fit within that, or I'm like you said, recently diabetic, or now GLP-1 patients are also looking for alternatives. I wonder if you could speak to that. So you've categorically, like on purpose, made it easy for people to identify what they should, how they should be interacting with you.
Yeah, and I think that I tell people all the time, one of the best parts about my job is I get to say we are foundationally good for you, right? And I think being built on that foundation allows us the opportunity to curate components of our categories that solve some of these unique challenges. So, if you were to come to dailyharvest.com, we certainly make it possible for you to select your preferences simply based off of what sounds great to you or what you're looking to solve for, breakfast, lunch, dinner, et cetera. But we've also made it very easy for consumers to find, exactly to your point, these sort of companion curated collections. GLP-1 is a great example where many folks that are starting to take those types of medicines are going to have to adjust what they eat and how they eat. It is critical for folks on GLP-1 medication to be getting higher protein, higher fiber offerings. And it's hard to do that on your own. And so we've made a curated bundle of our sort of core offerings that we think fit the bill, obviously working closely with our in-house nutritionists to guide that curation. And as you mentioned, we have a range of these on our site, Whole30, diabetes friendly, GLP-1 as just a few of those examples. I think what's important, though, is this speaks to how we see ourselves in the context of people's eating decisions. You might be looking for a reset. You might be looking for food as a preventative reality. You might be prescribed food as medicine, depending on what you're going through in your life. And so the more we can be there when you need us, right, and help you form the connection to delicious food in those moments, we know the easier it will be for people to stick to whatever change they need to make, or quite frankly, whatever short-term preferences they have. We haven't talked much about this yet, but I'd love to spend a little time. If it's not delicious, we know people are not going to continue to eat the foods that they're being prescribed, so to speak.
So
Um,
true.
and so
So true.
delicious is a core part of our ethos as well, because you should not have to sacrifice on taste simply to eat healthy.
Yeah. And, even for people like me who don't have a particular diagnosis, or I just want to eat more whole plant, nutrient dense foods. And so it's a great source for that as well. So I don't have to
Yeah.
have any special,
No, definitely not. I say this all the
yeah.
time to friends and family when I'm traveling a lot, which I tend to do for work. There's nothing I crave more, quite frankly, physically and emotionally than Daily Harvest, because I come home and I have a couple days of eating our food and I feel just better. I feel great. And so I know I'm a bit biased, but
A bit.
I have to say it is really some of the things we hear from consumers all the time, like after eating your food, I feel better, right? And that is obviously a subjective anecdote, but I think it's something we've always seen and heard, that if you eat food like this, you are going to feel better. You're going to have more energy, right? You're going to feel more clear-headed. And I know I can speak for myself that it's a great benefit of being a part of the Daily Harvest ecosystem.
It might be subjective, but you'll take that testimonial all
Yes.
day long. So that's not a problem. The other thing though is that you share some recipes that help those of us. I live in the southeast of the United States, and for our worldwide audience in the southeast of the United States in particular, the comfort foods have nothing to do with whole plant nutrient dense foods. It's biscuits, it's fried chicken, it's macaroni and cheese. And so, it's hard for some people who have grown up with their family and that's how they've eaten to make the transition. But you're providing some recipes to help people see where they can have that comfort food, but maybe a little bit differently, that's going to be a whole lot better for them.
Yeah, look, I think our gluten-free pasta meals is a great example of this, and maybe no better than our butternut mac and cheese, which
Oh,
I did a little bit of an experiment over the holiday here in the U.S. with Thanksgiving, as a core comfort food holiday, I cooked up some of our vegan, gluten-free butternut mac and cheese. And I did put a little bit of, crispy breadcrumbs on top. And at the end of the day, people were scooping up the item, had no idea it was gluten-free, no idea it was vegan. And I think, that's the sort of testament to our chef-driven approach. But it's true across our categories, right? Our lentil bolognese within that same category is something I go to all the time for when you're looking for that, sort of hearty pasta meal to kind of get you through your dinner. So yeah, I think to your point, leaning into flavors, leaning into international sort of cuisine preferences, leaning into comfort is something we know consumers are demanding, and no more so than protein in general also. We've had for a while, number one search, on our site is customers looking for protein solutions, which is why we just launched our new protein smoothies, which came out about 2 weeks ago in the very beginning of January and have been met with just incredible enthusiasm. So the other thing, Rachel, built into the ethos of the company early days as a founder was, the need to listen to your consumers, and the direct to consumer space affords you just so much direct connection and data. But we built the supply chain and the innovation engine to actually respond to that listening. And so our food will continue to evolve. We're excited for what else will come.
Yeah, great. I'm so glad we'll have all the links in the show notes, obviously, so people can check out your offerings in person and find out about your corporate mission. But before we leave, Ricky, is there anything else you would like to share with our audience?
No, I would say I think this is a really fascinating moment. You mentioned, at least here in the U.S., where are in the beginning of the year, we also have a new administration taking over. And, obviously we think about these sort of administration changes largely through the lens of the sort of political and electoral lens. I would say as someone leading a company with a mission like this that sees the challenges ahead, I'd really love to see a longer term commitment, bipartisan commitment to these types of changes that we need, and quite frankly, investments that we need. I think, as I mentioned, some of the investments on the supply chain or some of the shifts in how we grow food, these are not every 4-year decisions, right? These are decades in the making. And so would just say, well, I appreciate these topics have emerged through the sort of electoral political lens. I'm hopeful that we can try to capture some of that enthusiasm and make lasting change. It's a big task. We haven't been great at proving that out, but I am hopeful. I'm always an optimist, so more work to be done.
Absolutely. Well, here's to elevating the conversation moving forward. Thanks again for being with us, and to our audience, thank you for listening. Please subscribe and leave us some comments. We would love to know what you think. To Ricky's point of listening to your consumers and your audience, we'd like to do the same. Let us know what you're thinking, and we'll see you next time. I'm Pam Linemiller.
Thanks for listening to Future Foodcast. Future Foodcast is powered by Farm to Plate, the leading food blockchain platform. Subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts to stay up to date with the very latest innovations in the food industry.